Hello everybody and welcome to another video. In this video it's going to be another thoughts on, now this one is going to be on the new Boom Supersonic airliner. Now Boom, if you don't know, is going to be a supersonic airliner obviously that is going to hopefully be entering into service in 2023, and they are planning it through to be a 55-seat aircraft that will travel about Mach 2.2, and then it will be able to cut flight times in half, a lot of what Concorde did back when it was in operation. So as I said, it's going to be traveling at Mach 2.2, which is about 100 miles an hour faster than Concorde. It has 55 seats. And the cost is going to be comparable to business class, so it's not going to be massively expensive like Concorde was. They're hoping that the ticket prices will be only about 75%, they'll be 75% less than Concorde's was. And just an example, the a round trip from London to New York on Concorde was about $20,000, that's adjusted for inflation, and Boom hopes that they can cut this with their airliner to just $5,000, which, I mean, it's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than $20,000, and that's a 75% reduction, and it'll be a lot more attractive for passengers. And I believe that it will revolutionize the industry, not in terms of economy. It's designed for business class seats, but I believe that it won't be the only one there, but it will aid in the market for supersonic airliners. So the cabin is going to be just two abreast. It's going to have one seat between the aisle and the window, which will give a quite spacious experience, even if the aircraft isn't that wide. There's going to be large windows, and the aircraft is mainly made of carbon composites to reduce weight. It's going to have turbofan engines, which are not afterburning, to save fuel. But even with that, this aircraft is still probably going to be more expensive than most planes operating today. They've said that it's going to cost about $200 million, which, if I remember rightly, that's about the cost of an A330, I think, or maybe a bit less than that, I don't know. It's, yeah, for an aircraft that's only going to seat 55 people, but it is going to have the amount of seats that's on a general business class flight. That's what they're trying to target, because there's about 55 seats on an average business class flight on a subsonic aircraft, and they're hoping to just transfer it over to supersonic. What Blake Scholl, the CEO of Boom Supersonic, what he said is that when you upgrade to a new, like an upgrade to a different class on a flight, you go from economy and you want to upgrade to business, you're still getting in the same time. There's absolutely no time saved. The only difference is that you might be able to go into a lounge before your flight, and during the flight you'll be treated a bit more nicely and with more like food and stuff like that. You're not getting there in a quicker time. That's what is the general gist of it. You're getting there in the same amount of time, just with a different experience. And he's trying to bring an end to that. He's trying to make it and say, hey, business class, you can fly it supersonically. It's going to be the same price as business class is today, and it is a lot cheaper than Concorde, because Concorde had massive problems with its engine consumption. Its fuel consumption with its engines. Its engines were turbojets, which at the time were the only way you could really get supersonic. Turbofans were still a long way off, majorly in commercial aviation. The engines, they were afterburning, which was a large noise factor, and it also burned a lot more fuel. Concorde, it was like 100 miles per gallon per person. It's not 100 miles per gallon. It's 100 gallons per mile per person. That's how much fuel Concorde consumed, because it was massively inefficient. It was designed in a day when fuel cost wasn't the major cost of an airline, and nowadays it is, so you really have to factor that in. Also, the main thing, which I think will lead us to the success of this over most other supersonic programs, is the fact, well, it's not just that, but just supersonic aircraft in general, over the next decade, is the fact that the FAA are now considering repealing or updating the regulations regarding supersonic flight over land, because ever since 1973, I believe it was, they banned supersonic flight over land. And many of us speculated this could have been because the Americans, they wanted to try and halt the development of Concorde and its success, because they go like, oh, we don't want a supersonic airliner from a different country with our airlines. It's very patriotic there. That's the thing. They didn't really want that, so they just banned supersonic flight after theirs had failed, essentially, over land, and that really limited Concorde's ability to provide supersonic services, especially with the cost as well. It's now like it could only operate over ocean supersonically and profitably, and in basically London or Paris and New York, because it's only real viable route. But now it's soon to be authorized supersonic flight over land. Or it looks like that anyway. That's the thing. It's going to be the first time in, I think it's 45 years it will be, since supersonic flight has been allowed over land. Because that was the thing. Like the reason why they were put in place, supposedly, was the fact that supersonic flight at a perceived level of 75 decibels was a public nuisance. If it was over that, Concorde was 100 perceived level of decibels, it was going to be too loud. It was going to be a public nuisance, and people wouldn't want to hear it. But now the aircraft are a lot quieter in terms of sonic booms. There's been many developments of aircraft that are trying to combat the sonic boom. Lockheed have just been awarded a contract by NASA to actually try and develop by 2021 a concept plane in which there'll be absolutely no sonic boom, which will be used to deflect the sound waves away, shock waves away, so they don't converge and create a boom. What they're trying to do is they are trying to they're going to try and make that, and that will mean that supersonic flight will be allowed over land again, because they're a lot quieter. I mean, even the Boom aircraft, it's going to be about 30 times quieter than Concorde, and they're saying that that's going to be about it's going to be like a lawnmower or a motorbike going past. It's going to be that quiet. It's going to be like a general sound of a plane, and they're saying that when it takes off, it's going to have the same level of noise as current aircraft operating today. Because I mean, Concorde was only slightly louder, so you could kind of tell. But I mean, that was the thing with in the 70s, people saying, "Oh, it's too loud," but it was really there was really no foundation on that. And then when they tested it, they found that it actually wasn't. But that's the thing. Supersonic travel is now going to be a thing again. I mean, we always knew that it wouldn't go forever, because once Concorde went out of service, it was only just a matter of time before new aircraft were going to be developed. I mean, there was Boeing's Sonic Cruiser that they were planning to do, but it didn't really come to a proper success, because what they didn't actually make these planes. They just did it on a concept plane and go, oh yeah, that could be something that we could do, but they never actually achieved that. They just went with a concept plane and that was it. But now this is a lot different to the concepts that have come before them. This has got proper funding. It's got funding from Japan Airlines and Virgin, who are investing in it. It's also recently got funding from a brand new, not a brand new company. It's just recently it's got funding from a Chinese company. I think it's like C-Trip or something like that. And they are a Chinese company. They've recently just invested in it. I think they're a travel holiday company, and they've recently invested in it. And they've got about 85 million, I believe it is, $85 million worth of investment, and that's enough to get their XB-1 demonstrator in the air. They're based in Denver, and they're going to have this XB-1 demonstrator, which looks like this, and it is I believe it's only about a fifth scale or something like that. And so this current plane, it's only really designed to test the concept of the supersonic aircraft's wing. It's not going to be the final plane, but it's just going to be there to test it. If that all goes well, then they'll be able to pursue the development of their brand new supersonic airliner in full size, and they'll eventually, hopefully, according to them, get that in service by 2023. Now, according to what I've read, there's quite a few people in the industry that are quite optimistic. No, they're not quite optimistic. They reckon that the 2023 in-service date is quite optimistic, and that it will probably be coming anywhere between about 2027 or 2030. I believe that it probably won't come in 2023. I believe it'll probably be like a year or two after that, because remember Concorde, that was originally meant to come into service in 1971, and that took until 1976 for it to come into service. So it's not like that all of these are going to stick to their schedule, and plus Boom is a startup company, and even though it is getting investment from all around the world, it doesn't have a massive revenue stream that it can just pluck money from, develop this airliner quickly for the market and try and get it out as soon as possible. They're trying to get it out as soon as possible now, but because they're a small company, they're going to try and develop it as best as they can. And I think if they try and work towards that goal, then that will be I don't think they're going to meet it, but it's always good to be optimistic, because if you're going to try and make it as you're going to have to try and make it as good as possible in the shortest time as possible, and that's what drives innovation in the industry. Probably the reason why, but I probably wouldn't expect it to come into service until about 2025. If you send that to me, but who knows? It could be coming to service at that time, or even sooner than that. Who knows? But as I said, it's going to have a carbon composite fuselage. and wings as well, and it's going to have much larger windows than Concorde did. Concordes were absolutely tiny; they're only like 6 inches across or something. It's going to be 55 seats, as I said. These are all going to be in business class. Comparable ticket prices are going to be the same as today's subsonic business class, and there's going to be turbofan engines which aren't going to be afterburning. They're managing to perfect the technology now that it can travel supersonically without afterburner. And that's really key in the industry because that's just going to keep down fuel costs. That's why Concorde's fuel cost was so high, because for one, they were turbojets, so they actually had no bypassing air. It was just all of the air that came in was combusted, and it was part of the exhaust. The turbofan means that the air around the outside is actually going to muffle the sound. With no afterburner, it also doesn't make the loud sound and also decreases fuel consumption. And this is the thing, this aircraft is going to have 4,500 nautical miles of range, which is designed, and there's going to be 3 engines on it. It's going to have a chimed wing, and if you don't know what that is, that's basically where like the wing trails out all the way to the front. Concorde didn't do that; its wing stopped basically at its front wheel, front gear. But the wing on the Boom Supersonic airliner goes right forward and essentially goes to the front door at the R1 and L1 doors. Just before the cockpit, it looks like on this picture, which I'll probably put on screen to kind of show you how far forward it goes. What do I think of the success of this aircraft? Well, I believe that it will be a success, not maybe in the short term, but definitely in the long term. There's going to be much more supersonic flight throughout the next 10, 20 years, and I believe that the best way for the industry to get spearheaded into the new supersonic age will be with this aircraft. I don't know whether there will be bigger aircraft. I'd imagine that there will. This will be the first one out of all of them.
Internally at Boom, we call our first airplane Model A because it's the first step in a long series of aircraft. Over time, we're going to build larger airplanes that are more advanced and more fuel efficient, further driving down the cost of speed.
I believe that there will, in the near future, there could be much bigger planes that will operate with 150 passengers, 200 passengers, possibly more. It will be like 2 707 size, but much more efficient. But right now, I think we need to just build up in terms of size, do a bit like what happened in the aviation industry many decades ago with piston engine aircraft. You have it came out with the DC-3, then it gradually progressed up with like the DC-4, and then it came out to the Lockheed Constellation, and you got to the DC-7, and stuff like that, and then you got to jets, and it gradually progressed up from there. I think they need to go small right now to make it profitable, prove the concept. Once that's done, they could start thinking about bigger aircraft with 100, 200, 300 seats, whatever. Now, because this aircraft travels at Mach 2.2, it's actually going to be slightly faster than Concorde, as I touched upon before. It's going to be 100 miles an hour faster, roughly. So that means that Sydney to Los Angeles, instead of a 15-hour flight, it's 6 hours and 45 minutes, albeit this does have a fuel stop. All Pacific flights are going to have a technical stop, simply because the range isn't enough. But transatlantic should be, such as New York to London, which they hope will be the most popular route, as it was in Concorde's day. That's going to be in 3 hours and 15 minutes. Concorde travelled the Atlantic in about 3 hours and 30 minutes. That was its average flight time. And this is going to be instead of 7 hours. And Tokyo to San Francisco will be in just 5 hours and 30 minutes instead of 11 hours. And again, it's still with a fuel stop. Instead of a direct 11-hour flight. Now, the cost of these flights, roughly in terms of ticket prices, Sydney to Los Angeles is going to be about $3,500 each way. New York to London is going to be about $2,500 each way, and Tokyo to San Francisco about $3,200 each way. Now, this is quite, it's still expensive, but it is a lot cheaper than Concorde. As I said, it's about 75% less. Concorde was a lot more expensive because it had to have a high ticket price just to cover its costs of operation with high fuel costs, high maintenance, etc. This plane is, although it's going to be more expensive than today's current airliners, it's going to be a lot more efficient than Concorde. It's going to prove supersonic flight, I believe anyway, that it will prove it much more viable than Concorde was. Concorde was really a one-off project, and the fact that it went into service for so long after it did, I think it's quite, what's the word? I commend British Airways and Air France for keeping it in service as long as they did, especially after the crash in 2000. You would think that would be like the end of it, but it really wasn't. It really wasn't. They tried reinstating their services again. They kept on flying New York to London and New York to Paris again, but they didn't do as many routes as they used to do, like going to Washington and stuff like that, because the market basically dried up by then and they could only really do New York to London. But the seats were just barely full at all, so they had to retire it. And plus, with the high cost, it just couldn't fill itself up. And that's what Blake Scholl, who is the CEO of Boom Technologies, he is saying that they are going for a 55-seat airliner because on average Concorde was filled about half, and Concorde was about 100 seats, so 55 is about the halfway point, and this will mean that even if this plane is half full, it will lose a lot less money than Concorde did, because they've made it about 30% more efficient than Concorde, and Blake Scholler said that this is all that they needed to make it a commercially viable option by making it a lot more efficient. They just needed it 30% more efficient to make ticket prices comparable to today's. But I believe it's probably even more than that, and I'd imagine that they're going to strive to try and make it as efficient as possible before it enters service, because the more efficient it is, the less it costs, and the less the ticket prices are going to be, which is going to attract airlines and more customers to said airlines, aircraft flying on all sorts of routes. So yeah, I think that this aircraft could become the leading supersonic aircraft in the civil aviation sector in the next decade or so. I don't think that the other aircraft will really get up to the same level as this, because this is really designed as an airliner. The aircraft like the Spike S512, is it, or 215, something like that, and the Aerion AS2. They are designed really as private jets. They think that the next market is going to be private jets, is going to be businessmen that want to get there quickly and they just want to charter out their own aircraft that will be able to fly quickly to where they need to go on their own time. I think that the supersonic airliner, in terms of airline service, will also revolutionize the market. I think that private jets, how do I put it? They're already fast now. They're actually, a lot of them, like the Gulfstream and stuff like that, they actually cruise faster than subsonic planes do. They cruise about the same speed as the 707. They're just all like Mach 1.89 sort of thing. I mean, it is quite fast in terms of subsonic travel. So I believe that this aircraft will be the next one that it will be the main successor to Concorde. I believe, like, not all of these other planes, they're really just business jets. This is the real successor of the Concorde. I mean, you can just tell by the wing shape, rudder shape, fuselage shape, nose shape, everything shape, you can tell that it is going to be the successor to Concorde. And plus, with the fact that supersonic aircraft over land is soon to be allowed, or it looks like it's soon to be allowed if the legislation is repealed, that will mean that this aircraft can now do routes like New York to Los Angeles in an hour or 2 hours. Right now it's about 4 or 5 hours. It will make Los Angeles as close to London as Athens is to London with a subsonic aircraft. This is the thing that's going to be revolutionising the world. It's not going to be massively ordered, I don't think. At first, definitely not. It's got 2 airlines on board now, Virgin and JAL. I believe that more could come in the future, maybe not in terms of investments, but in terms of orders. And I think once the aircraft's in service, then we'll really see a proof of concept. We really have to wait until this supersonic aircraft flight over land ban comes out, or the legislation is not repealed, but it's amended, so it is a lot more. It's much more relaxed. I mean, in 75 perceived levels of decibels, this aircraft is going to be much quieter than that, and all the other supersonic airliners that are coming forth. There's really no need for this legislation to be in place, especially since Concorde went out of operation. What was the point? There's nothing there to do that. So there you go. That's just my thoughts on this. I've rambled on for ages and ages and ages. I hope that I got some sort of coherent thing out of this that I'll probably have to be edit down. But yeah, supersonic travel 2023 or 2020s, I was going to say. The 2020s at some point, start saving up. I mean, it's about £1,250, I think, to go to New York to London one way, which is definitely a far cry from the £8,000 one way that Concorde was. So the future is very exciting. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video if you decide to that one as well. Bye! Enjoy yourself.